Beyond that, because we're all overachievers, we're also looking to set the stage for humans on Mars.
So folks, we are here today with Dr. Moogega Cooper, who has perhaps the single coolest job description and job title in the entire universe. Dr. Moo, you are a planetary protection engineer. So please, I know we covered this in the past in a video, but for the uninitiated, what does it mean? Are you basically a guardian of the galaxy?
In a way, yeah. I'm myself and my team are guardians of the galaxy. At least on the local level, it's our job to make sure that, at least with the Perseverance rover, to make sure that it was clean before it left our wonderful planet, to ensure that we don't contaminate Mars, the place where we're looking for ancient microbial life.
Yes, we don't need to bring any of our ancient and current microbial life there. I want to leave it as undisturbed as possible. So yeah. You mentioned that is sort of the purpose of this mission, but for the uninitiated, what is the entire scope of the Perseverance's mission to Mars?
The goals of the mission are multi-level, right? There's looking for ancient signs of life, which would be a huge thing on its own. But beyond that, because we're all overachievers, we're also looking to set the stage for humans on Mars. There are several instruments that are dedicated to making sure that we understand what the weather conditions are, the radiation, and also to convert the CO2 in the atmosphere to oxygen so that we have a fuel source for return flights, or also a breathing source, which would be nice, right, when you send humans there.
Yes, I don't want to have to hold my breath David Blaine style when I finally get to the red planet.
Yeah, no David Blaine level expertise should be required to go to Mars, although it's still a lot of educational magic here, educated magic happening.
I'm curious for you folks, what was the mood like during launch day?
Oh, for launch day, oh my goodness. It was a little bit bittersweet because clearly we were excited to get to this moment. There were so many barriers thrown in our way with the global pandemic, and also launching a spacecraft is hard. So all of that culminated into that one day. The bitter side was, it was hard for many of us to share this moment with our family because we were in a global pandemic. So thankfully, the sweetness overwhelmed the bitterness, right? And we were all able to just enjoy that momentous occasion.
Of course. And soon we'll be able to all enjoy it in person as well. But for now, we all get to celebrate collectively through the magic of Zoom and teleconferencing. But I hear you. How did that feeling compare, though, to when on the other end of that spectrum? What's the mood like during those tense moments leading up to when you finally land on the Martian surface?
I think that it was, just like you said, a lot more tense compared to the launch day. We worked with our launch providers many times before. They have a great track record when it comes to launch success. But for landing, we had still a great record, but a record of 1 using the sky crane, a success rate of 100% with an N=1. So to make that N=2 100% success rate happen, it was unnerving because we knew that thousands of things had to go right for this to land successfully. So there was a lot more tension, but we still had the same amount of trust in the smart people that made this possible.
For those who, like a layman out there, such as myself, for example, what does the descent stage entail? Because you mentioned there are all of these thousands of little things that could go wrong or different factors that play into it. So what is that like and what happens to the rover as it's making its descent onto Mars?
So there are several key milestones that happen, to include the heat shield. So if you imagine first the entire aeroshell, it has a back shell and a heat shield. That heat shield, which is like a lens cap, needs to pop off and then not slam back into the spacecraft. So, just from the beginning where you're popping off that heat shield, it needs to fall away from you. And you have to make sure you guide this extremely large vessel in a way so that you don't hit it. So there are divert maneuvers. There are pyrotechnics that have to happen, fire at the right time. The parachute deploy had to happen. That's the largest supersonic parachute we've ever made. So it's pretty incredible for that to not only work, but work perfectly. Pyros have to be cut exactly at the right time as you're lowering the descent stage, lowering the rover down to the surface. There are several pyros that need to cut those bridles and the umbilical cord. And if that doesn't happen, once the descent stage flies away, it could have dragged the entire rover with it, which would be bad, right? So all of these things worked perfectly.
From your vantage point and the work that you and your team do, what is one of the biggest challenges in a mission like this?
This is the cleanest spacecraft that we ever had to make. So that was a big challenge for us for this mission. I mean, we stood on the shoulders of our predecessors who knew how to clean spacecraft. We looked at other industries, like in the medical industry. They're very familiar with cleaning things that go in your body. Mm-hmm. And so we leveraged all of that technology to make sure that we apply that to our spacecraft and make sure it's clean and that we verify that it is as clean as possible.
So how long was the sort of process from sort of concept of this mission to it touching down?
Yeah, it was about a good 9 years between from concept to reality. And I was, by the time it landed, working on that mission for 8 years. I stopped once launch happened. We had a few months worth of making documents and tying our bows on things. But a good solid 7.5 years worth of work is what I put in there. But yeah, it's about 8 or 9 years or 8 or so years from concept to reality.
Oh my goodness. That is, I feel like people don't necessarily, myself included, don't understand the sort of scale and scope of missions like these, because you hear about them most when they are getting closer to something tangible that the public can latch onto, like a launch or the descent. But it's amazing that like there's this much sort of pre-prep required. Would you say that's kind of par for the course, or is it kind of varies mission by mission?
It's pretty par for the course. I mean, most missions, so I've also worked on InSight, and the time frame was around 7-8 years as well. Same for the last rover, we call it MSL, Mars Science Laboratory, but Curiosity also took about that long. And we need that amount of time to make sure all the boxes are checked from beginning to end, to make sure it's tested in the right environment, to troubleshoot any issues that come up and get us there successfully.
After Perseverance, what are you moving on to next? Is there anything you can talk about? And what do you hope to move on to from here?
Yeah, so I'm currently working on the Europa lander mission concept. And that, I think, I'm a Mars person all the way, but then one of the other extremely cool places that if you were to pick a place that is just fascinating, it would be the icy bodies. And in particular, Europa, because there is, under that thick layer of ice, a liquid ocean. And where you find water, you could possibly find life somewhere else in our universe, in our solar system. I'm really excited about that because my job is still to make sure that lander happens in a clean way. So we're very early on in that 7-8 year chunk of time frame that it takes to typically get a project up and running. But yeah, that's what I'm excited about working on now. And I hope to work on the sample return side for these samples that we're collecting soon. I hope to help bring that back safely in a way where we can understand the samples and understand whether or not we're alone in this solar system.
I love this convergence where you're able to project images in your mind a little bit through something like pop culture, science fiction, but I love this idea where now it's becoming less fi and more sci as we're able to meet the sort of what we dreamed up in these stories of years past. So it's very exciting stuff.
That's a really great way to say it. And even the whole Mars sample return concept, I know people who have long retired that have been working on this for 30 years. So forget the whole 7-8 year thing. 30 years we've been trying to get a sample back from Mars and counting. So I'm excited to finally get that done.
That's amazing. Well, good things take time though. And speaking of which, I'm curious as well, because you mentioned that part of Perseverance's, the scope of their mission is it's trying to sort of evaluate conditions on Mars for potential human life there. But how far away would you say from realistic next steps something like that would be, even like in a general ballpark sense?
So there are mixed reactions when it comes to how reasonable is it for us to get there in the next decade or two. And I think there's still a lot to iron out. And that's why I'm really encouraged by what NASA is currently doing with the Artemis program. I mean, you can imagine when you're learning how to drive a car, right? You don't get in the car and then drive all the way to, the Bay Area 5 hours away. You kind of start in your parking lot, you do some nearer term or nearer distance practice sessions before you go very far away, just in case something goes wrong. And that's the same thing with the Artemis project is, let's not immediately send humans to Mars. Let's do some test bed dirty work here on the moon. We're close enough so that if something maybe doesn't go as planned, we can recover from that. And so at least we're a little bit closer to getting boots on the ground on Mars. through the initiative on the moon.
You don't want to just send someone. We don't want a Matt Damon situation on our hands there.
Exactly.
I'm sure you folks are tired of hearing his name at this point.
Okay.
But I'm curious as well. Right now, we're seeing sort of a major uptick in headlines and reports and just developments with commercial space travel companies, many of whom have partnered with NASA in certain capacities, like SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin. How do you think that companies like these can augment the mission of NASA and help make space flight and space travel and space research feel more accessible to average people?
I love the way you frame that question by saying augmenting what we're doing at NASA, because those private industries are very much needed. What NASA does is about pushing the envelope of our understanding and discovering new things. And a lot of times there's not a real dollar sign per se on that. And we need our industry partners to help us travel to low Earth orbit, maybe have some sort of space commercialization and put that within the reach of normal people. So yeah, I think we really need those partners to help with making things a little bit more accessible and more affordable, while NASA continues in parallel to just push the envelope and discover new things.
And last question for you. I'm curious, do you have a favorite story from pop culture, TV, movies, books, etc., involving Mars, one that's near and dear to your heart?
Contact is my all-time favorite movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the scene where the father is asked, do you think we're alone out there? And he's like, well, if we're not, it's an awful waste of space. And that's what I love about all the space exploration when we're looking toward Mars, to see if there's signs of ancient life. It's not living right now, but if there was something living in the ancient past, 13 more billion years ago, right? 33 billion, whatever in the past. The goal is to see, are we alone here? Because if we are, sure, I'll accept that conclusion, but it would be an awful waste of space. So yeah, that resonates with me very much.
If it is an awful waste of space, I'm at least glad that we are trying and looking to see what's actually out there. Dr. Moo, thank you so much for taking the time to do this and shed some light on the Perseverance mission to our viewers. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you online?
Oh yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, any handle, just at Moogega, Moogega. And I encourage you to check out all of the really great outreach activities on NASA's website, mars.nasa.gov. There are images, you can hear the sounds on Mars. There's just amazing things you can check out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate you taking the time, and have a great day.
You too. Bye.
All right.